The gentle summer breeze swept across the vast cornfields of central Illinois, carrying with it the sweet scent of ripening grain. In the heart of America's breadbasket, where golden wheat fields stretched as far as the eye could see, my story began. I wasn't always William Turner, the man seeking revenge. Once, I was just a simple farm boy who believed in love, trust, and the American dream. The Gentry family owned the largest grain elevator in our county. Their massive concrete silos stood like silent sentinels against the prairie sky, a testament to 3 generations of hard work and business acumen. My family, the Turners, operated the biggest grain farm in the area. It was natural that our paths would cross, the Gentrys and the Turners, bound together by the eternal cycle of planting and harvest. Jenny Gentry caught my eye when we were just kids in elementary school. She was the pretty girl from town, with sun-kissed hair and a smile that could light up the darkest day. I was the quiet farm boy who spent more time on a tractor than at the local diner. But something clicked between us, a connection that grew stronger with each passing season. We weren't high school sweethearts, not in the traditional sense. Both of us dated other people, explored different relationships. Jenny had her share of boyfriends from the football team, while I focused on learning the family business and occasionally dating girls from neighboring towns. But somehow, we always found our way back to each other. During our junior year at the University of Illinois, everything changed. We were both business administration majors, though I took extra agriculture courses. One crisp autumn evening, after a homecoming game, Jenny and I decided to give us a real shot. We became exclusive, promising to be faithful to each other. Or at least, that's what I thought. 2 days after our promise, Jenny betrayed me for the first time. Lewis Fairbanks, a senior on the baseball team, couldn't keep his mouth shut about his conquest. He bragged about visiting Jenny when her parents were away, about being with her in her own bed. Kate, Jenny's sister, overheard and told me everything. "Well, please don't do anything rash," Kate had pleaded. "Jenny loves you. She made a mistake, but she loves you more than anything. It won't happen again," she promised. I wanted to believe her. God knows, I wanted to trust that Jenny's infidelity was a one-time lapse in judgment. So I swallowed my pride and my pain, but I didn't forget. For the next 6 months, I watched Jenny like a hawk, looking for any sign that she might stray again. When no further indiscretions came to light, I proposed. The ring wasn't as big as what some of her friends got, but it was what I could afford without going into debt. Jenny cried when I got down on one knee in the middle of her father's grain elevator. It seemed perfect. The farmer's son and the grain merchant's daughter, joining 2 of the county's most prominent agricultural families. The wedding was everything a Midwestern ceremony should be. We exchanged vows in the old Methodist church, followed by a reception in the high school gymnasium. The whole town turned out to celebrate. Even then, I insisted on a prenuptial agreement. "It's just business," I explained to Jenny. "Both our families have significant assets to protect." She agreed readily enough, perhaps too readily in retrospect. The first few years of marriage were good, or at least they seemed that way. I expanded the farm operations while Jenny worked with her family at the grain elevator. We built a beautiful house on the edge of town, close enough to be part of the community, but far enough out to see the stars at night. Then came the July night that changed everything. I never would have discovered Jenny's betrayal if it hadn't been for John Carter, an agent from the Illinois Department of Agriculture. He dropped by for a routine inspection while Jenny was supposedly at a spa weekend with her sister Kate. "A spa weekend, huh?" John's expression was oddly knowing. "My cousin works there as a masseuse. You might want to look into that place, Will." Something in his tone made my stomach clench. That evening, after John left, I found myself searching online for information about the spa. What I discovered made my blood run cold. There on an adult streaming site was my wife. The woman who had promised to love and cherish me was performing acts that made me physically ill to watch. I paid the $100 membership fee without hesitation. Then I spent another $160 downloading 8 videos from their archives. Each one was like a dagger to my heart, but I forced myself to watch them all. I needed to know the full extent of Jenny's betrayal. Marco and Steve. Those were the names of the men my wife had been with. I didn't know if there were more, and honestly, I didn't care. 2 was more than enough to destroy our marriage. I made multiple copies of the videos and stored them securely. My father, bless his practical soul, had installed a wall safe behind a hidden panel in my office's built-in bookcase. It was there I kept the original DVDs, along with copies of our prenuptial agreement. With the evidence secured, I sent Jenny a text message. "Jenny, this is William. I know exactly what you're doing at the spa, and I have evidence to prove it. Don't bother coming back to the house. This house is no longer your home, and soon I won't be your husband. We're done. My lawyer will contact you in the next few days. Arrangements can be made for you to collect your belongings at that time." The response came the next morning. "William, what on earth are you talking about? I have no idea what's going on. Kate and I are packing up now, and we'll be home in a couple of hours. I don't understand what you think I did, but you're mistaken. I'll talk to you when I get there, and we can sort this out. I love you, William." Her voicemail was almost word for word the same. I wondered if she had rehearsed it, preparing for the day she might be caught. When she called again, I texted back. "I wonder if Marco would have any idea what I'm talking about, honey? Why don't you have him call me, and I'll ask him." The next step was finding a new lawyer. Brian Mitchell, who had been both our attorney, made it clear he would represent Jenny if pushed to choose. It wasn't surprising. The grain business was more lucrative than my farm operations. Still, his betrayal stung almost as much as Jenny's. Mark Davis came highly recommended. He had a reputation for being competitive, especially against Brian Mitchell. His wife, Rachel, who worked as his assistant, had a keen insight into the emotional aspects of divorce cases. They would prove to be invaluable allies in the battles to come. I scheduled a meeting with Jenny, Brian, and Mark for Thursday morning. It would be our first face-to-face confrontation since I discovered her infidelity. I had specific questions prepared, questions that would determine whether there was any hope of salvaging our marriage. But deep down, I already knew the answer. The prenuptial agreement was clear. In case of infidelity, the cheating spouse would receive only $25,000 for each year of marriage instead of 50% of our assets. The faithful spouse would receive $225,000 per year. Jenny had a lot to lose if I could prove her unfaithfulness. As I prepared for the meeting, I couldn't help but think about all the years we'd wasted. The childhood friendship, the college romance, the seemingly perfect marriage, all of it built on a foundation of lies. The farm boy and the grain merchant's daughter. It should have been a perfect American love story. Instead, it had become a tale of betrayal, and soon it would become a story of revenge. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come. The discovery of Jenny's infidelity was just the beginning. In the heartland of America, where family names and reputations still matter, the Gentrys were about to learn that betrayal carries a heavy price. And I, William Turner, would be the one to collect that debt, one painful payment at a time. The morning of the meeting dawned clear and hot, typical for an Illinois summer. I arrived at Brian's office at exactly 10:30, Mark by my side. Jenny's silver Mercedes was already in the parking lot, its presence a reminder of the lifestyle our marriage had afforded her. She looked better than she had earlier in the week. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She'd made an effort to look nice, probably hoping to sway me with the beauty that had once captured my heart. "William, I hope we can finally talk and clear up this misunderstanding," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I miss you and want to come home." I didn't respond. I couldn't trust my voice not to betray the turmoil of emotions churning inside me. Mark took charge, his voice steady and professional. "We're here to discuss the divorce process for William and Jenny." Both parties should express their thoughts and opinions on how to move forward. Brian, ever the politician, added his piece. My client believes this is all a big misunderstanding and is eager to resolve these issues with her husband. The condescension in his tone made my blood boil. That works for me, Brian, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Your client can talk to her husband. I turned to Jenny, laying out the facts of our prenuptial agreement. The terms were clear. In case of divorce, we each kept our family's assets. The only question was how to divide our joint financial holdings. Jenny, I said, I'm going to ask you some questions. Your answers will determine if I proceed with the divorce and on what grounds. Her face paled slightly, but she nodded. This will also affect the financial settlements. If you want to save our marriage, you must answer truthfully. Yes, William, she replied quickly. I will answer your questions honestly. I love you and want our marriage to survive. The words sounded hollow, rehearsed. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right and come back home. I asked to record our conversation. Brian, ever the cautious lawyer, advised against it. But Jenny, perhaps believing she could still talk her way out of this, agreed. Her hands trembled as she watched me set up the recorder. My first question focused on the period between our commitment to exclusivity and our engagement. Were you faithful during that time, Jenny? She smiled, confidence returning to her features. Of course I was, William. Line number 1. I reminded her of Louis Fairbanks, of what had happened just 2 days after we promised to be exclusive. The smile vanished from her face. I told her how close I had come to walking away then, how Kate had convinced me to give her another chance. The questions continued, covering our engagement and early marriage. Each answer revealed more lies, more deception. With each revelation, Jenny's composure cracked a little more. The perfect facade of the grain merchant's daughter was crumbling. Brian, noticing Jenny's deteriorating state, suggested a break. We agreed to reconvene after lunch. Mark, Rachel, and I headed to the local diner, where their company provided a brief respite from the pain. Watching their easy affection reminded me of what Jenny and I had once shared, or what I thought we had shared. When we returned, I reminded Jenny one last time about the importance of complete honesty. From the day we got married until now, did you ever cheat on me? Tears welled up in her eyes. Yes, William, I did cheat on you. I'm so sorry. Can you ever forgive me? I asked Brian and Mark to leave the room. Alone with Jenny, I pressed for details. Her story was carefully crafted. One moment of weakness at the spa, a massage that went too far. She claimed it was a single incident with Marco, a momentary lapse in judgment. But I knew better. I had watched the videos, heard her words, seen her betrayal play out in vivid detail. Is this the truth, Jenny? The whole truth and nothing but the truth. She hesitated, weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. Yes, William, that's what happened. I'm so sorry. The pain in my chest was almost unbearable, but I maintained my composure. I called Mark and Brian back into the room. This meeting is over, I announced. I'm filing for divorce based on infidelity, and the terms of our prenuptial agreement will be enforced. Jenny's shock was palpable. But why, William? I confessed to my infidelity, and I'm begging you to forgive me. Her voice rose with desperation. Please, William, please. I love you so much. You lied to me, Jenny, I replied, my voice cold. You didn't care enough about our marriage to be completely honest. The truth hung heavy in the air between us. If you had been, I might have considered working things out. I know you were unfaithful more than just a one time with Marco, I continued, and I have the evidence. Her face went white as she realized the extent of my knowledge. I warned you to tell the truth, and you didn't care enough about me or our marriage to do so. As I walked toward the door, Jenny screamed, Wait, William, I'll tell you everything you want to know. But it was too late. The trust was broken beyond repair. In my anger and hurt, I made a crucial mistake. I left the recorded confession in Brian's office. It wasn't until I was home, nursing a beer in my office, that I realized my error. When I called Mark about it, he confirmed my fears. The tape was gone. That evening, as I watched the news and contemplated my next moves, I heard a vehicle pull into the yard. The security lights should have illuminated the driveway, but they remained dark. Something wasn't right. I stepped onto the back porch, trying to peer into the darkness. A shadow moved at the edge of my vision. Then pain exploded in the back of my head. The last thing I saw was a blinding flash of light before everything went black. I woke up in the hospital, surrounded by beeping machines and the antiseptic smell of medical equipment. A nurse sat beside me, her presence both comforting and concerning. "Hi, William. I'm Chloe," she said softly. "Please don't try to move, okay?" Dr. Kate explained my injuries. Multiple trauma from a beating, a reinflated lung. The EMTs had arrived just in time to save my life. Someone had tried to kill me on my own property, in the heart of farm country, where people still left their doors unlocked. Detectives Douglas and Barnes visited as soon as I was coherent. They explained that it appeared to be a robbery gone wrong. A 2x4 with traces of my hair and blood was found on the porch. Inside, the house had been ransacked, pictures taken off walls, filing cabinets rifled through, jewelry stolen. But something didn't add up. The timing was too perfect, the attack too targeted. As I lay in my hospital bed, the pieces started coming together in my mind. The missing recording, the assault, the search through my files. Someone was looking for the evidence of Jenny's infidelity. Chloe, my nurse, became my confidant during my recovery. She understood betrayal, having gone through her own divorce after her husband's infidelity. Her gentle presence and quiet strength helped me through the darkest days of my recovery. 4 days later, I was released from the hospital. The house was still a mess, evidence of the violent intrusion that had nearly cost me my life. But something the attackers couldn't have found, was the safe behind the bookcase. The evidence was still secure, waiting to be used. As I stood in my ransacked office, a plan began to form. Jenny and her family had underestimated me. They thought they could intimidate me, force me to back down, but they had no idea what I was capable of. The farm boy they had always looked down on was about to show them just how dangerous he could be. The game was changing. This wasn't just about divorce anymore. This was about justice, about making the Gentrys pay for their sins. And I had just the right weapons: business acumen, careful planning, and cold, hard evidence. In the heartland of America, where a man's word is supposed to be his bond, the Gentrys had chosen deceit and violence. Now, they would learn that every action has consequences, and I would be the one to teach them that lesson, no matter the cost. The realization hit me while reviewing an old invoice from Red Incorporated, Remote Electronic Data Storage Solutions. I had completely forgotten about the surveillance system covering my property. Every inch of the house, grain bins, and machine shed was monitored, with footage backed up nightly to Red servers. In my haste to protect the evidence of Jenny's infidelity, I had overlooked an even more damaging piece of evidence. Logging into Red's website, I downloaded the footage from the night of the attack. There it was in crisp digital clarity: Tom's pickup truck pulling into my driveway. Two figures emerging from the darkness, their faces clearly visible in the security lights before they disabled them. Tom and Ethan Gentry, my own brothers-in-law, caught in the act of attempted murder. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Jenny must have told them about the videos. They thought they could intimidate me, force me to back down by destroying the evidence. Instead, they had given me exactly what I needed to destroy their entire family. But I didn't want them in jail. Prison was too easy, too quick. I wanted them to suffer as I had suffered, to watch helplessly as everything they valued was stripped away. The Gentrys had always prided themselves on their business acumen. I would use that pride to orchestrate their downfall. My first call was to an old college friend at Cargill, one of the largest grain merchandisers in the United States. Hey, Mike, remember that conversation we had about expanding your operations in central Illinois? The wheels were already turning in my mind. I think I might have an opportunity for you. A quick trip to Phoenix followed, ostensibly for business. But my real target was Jenny's father, Harold Gentry. The old man had always treated me with a mixture of condescension and barely concealed disdain. Now he would help me destroy everything he had built, whether he wanted to or not. I laid out the evidence for Harold in his air-conditioned Arizona home. The videos of Jenny's infidelity. The footage of his sons attempting to kill me. The financial implications if this information became public. Your choice is simple, I told him. Sell me your controlling interest in Gentry Grain, or watch your children go to prison. Harold's face turned ashen as he watched the security footage. They could have killed you, he whispered. My own sons. His shoulders slumped in defeat. What's your offer? The price was fair. I didn't need to gouge him. The satisfaction would come later. We signed the papers that afternoon. Harold Gentry, the proud patriarch of the Gentry grain empire, had just sold his legacy to the farm boy he had never thought worthy of his daughter. Back in Illinois, I contacted Mark to arrange a meeting with the Gentry siblings. Tell them it's about the grain storage situation, I instructed. Mention that the state's grain reserves might be insufficient without my facilities. They agreed readily, not realizing they were walking into a trap. The conference room at Gentry Grain was thick with tension when I arrived. Jenny, Tom, Ethan, and Kate sat around the table, their faces a mixture of hostility and apprehension. I placed the divorce papers in front of Jenny without preamble. Sign these. William, I don't want a divorce, she protested. Whatever you think I did isn't worth throwing away all the good years we've had. Her voice cracked with emotion. I wish you could forgive me and work through our problems. If you choose to fight me on the infidelity issue, Jenny, I'll have no choice but to present this DVD as evidence in court. I placed the copy on the table. It shows all 8 times you cheated on me at the spa. Her face drained of color. In case you're wondering, it's quite detailed. With trembling hands, Jenny signed the papers. Her siblings watched in shocked silence. Thank you, I said, tucking the documents into my briefcase. Now, let's discuss the grain storage situation. Tom tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. I initiated this meeting, so I suggest you all listen to what I have to say. The authority in my voice surprised even me. I genuinely believe it's in everyone's best interest. Due to the divorce, you will no longer have the value of my stored grain included in your reserves, I explained. This put you in violation of your grain license and loan agreements. I paused, letting the implications sink in. However, I have a solution. I have purchased your father's 52% stake in the business. The shock on their faces was palpable. Your agreement with him lacked a first right of refusal clause, making the purchase quite straightforward. Tom's face turned red with anger. You son of a dash. I'm not finished. I cut him off. I've negotiated a deal to sell my controlling interest to Cargill. The name of the agricultural giant hung in the air like a guillotine blade. They're always looking for promising grain operations. You have the option to sell your shares at the same price I negotiated, I continued. The downside is that the company will be owned by someone else. I smiled without warmth. The upside is that you each have a 1-year job guarantee. I've also sold my farm and Max's farm to Cargill. The final piece of my plan clicked into place. Max has entered a long-term contract to manage both farms for them. Tom exploded. What the hell have you done, William? You've ruined this family business because my sister cheated on you. His face was purple with rage. What kind of man are you? How did you convince my father to sell? I placed a second DVD on the table. This video provides all the answers you seek about why this is happening. My voice was ice cold. It clearly shows your pickup truck in my yard the night I was assaulted. Jenny's face went white as she realized the implications. Your brothers thought they could protect you by killing me, I told her. Instead, they gave me the weapon I needed to destroy your entire family. Consider yourselves fortunate that I chose this path of vengeance rather than turning this over to the police. The threat hung heavy in the air. Your father sold me his shares to keep all three of you out of jail. Jenny swayed in her chair, then fainted. Mia and Ethan rushed to catch her. I watched dispassionately as they tried to revive her. Your father wasn't very proud of his children, I added, except for Mia. Standing up, I gathered my belongings. As I mentioned earlier, I believe I wasted most of my life on you, Jenny. My voice was steady, controlled, but I won't waste any more of my future. Walking out of the Gentry grain office for the last time, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The grain elevator cast a long shadow in the late afternoon sun, a shadow that would no longer darken my life. The farm boy they had underestimated had orchestrated their downfall with a precision that would have made any Chicago businessman proud. In the heartland of America, where reputation and family name still mean something, the Gentrys would have to live with their shame. Their precious grain empire would belong to a faceless corporation. Their children would work as employees in the business they once owned. And every time they drove past my former farm, they would remember the man they had betrayed, the man who had taken everything from them. As for me, I had a new life to build. Maybe someday I would trust again, love again. But for now, the satisfaction of justice served was enough. In the end, the grain merchant's daughter and her family had learned a harsh lesson about underestimating a simple farmer. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is served not with violence, but with a perfectly executed business deal and the cold, hard truth.